Don't we all just want to change the world? Don't we all really want to make a difference? We want our life to make a difference. Sometimes, myself included, we look for something grandiose and bigger than life to fulfill that dream in us that we want to change the world. But what I have discovered in my life is sometimes changing the world starts with changing one person at a time. And that is something that every single one of us can do. Whether you're watching this and you think, I don't make a difference, I'm not impressionable on people, I can't speak well, I can't sing well, I'm not good in public, I'm an introvert. It doesn't matter, because God has equipped us with tools that we can make a difference. So today's video is about a little person, I say a lot throughout the video, this little 90-pound person that absolutely transformed my life. Not just a little, not just did a nice thing here or there. This little person transformed my life. And when you think about all the random meetings that you have with people, do you think they're random? I don't. I believe every person we come across for a reason. And it's up to us to fulfill a lot of the destiny in that meeting. As we go on through the video, you're going to hear funny stories. This is a 2-part series because there's no way I could make it into one video. So the first part is how my best friend LeAnn absolutely transformed my life, and how you can learn from LeAnn and truly transform somebody else, one person at a time. The world and social media is screaming to be heard. Everybody wants to make a difference. And I think if we just stopped and thought about it, one-on-one connections can do more than any social media could ever try. Doing things for somebody makes such a lasting impression, and it lasts a lot longer than an Instagram story or a Facebook post. So I met LeAnn around 2000, and I was the manager of a home health agency that was largely taking care of specialized needs children. Most of the children had tracheostomies, were on ventilators, and just a lot of horribly tragic stories. They were either born with congenital conditions like cerebral palsy or muscular neurodiseases, or they had encountered horrific accidents like drownings or sports injuries that had left them paralyzed. It's every parent's worst nightmare. And I decided I would manage that company. So I had 25 of those tragic cases, over 100 nurses. I think I was about 32 years old, pretty young myself. I had a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, and probably 8 or 9-year-old. When I went to meet the parents of these families, when I took over as manager, I learned on the first case wasn't going to be the thrill that I thought it was going to be. Because when I knocked on their doors, I represented everything that was painful in their life. I represented how they didn't have normalcy, how they didn't have privacy. While they were very grateful that my agency supplied home health nurses to help them and help their child live, they also were very, rightly so, bitter and mad that here I was representing what was not normal in their life. So when I went to meet these parents, I kind of would walk up to the door like, oh boy, I'm going to take another beating. But one day I knocked on the door of one of the mothers, and she swung the door open and she said, hello. And anybody who knew LeAnn knows that's exactly like she sounded. Is that not true? And we went in and started talking about her case and her son. Her condition was very unique. She was pregnant with Joshua years before, and someone had came over and contaminated her with the chickenpox virus. Joshua was affected in utero. He wasn't supposed to live. She has such a story, which I am hoping one day her family will tell, about what she went through with her son Joshua. I can only give you a snippet of it today because I have another story to tell. Everybody that knew her has a wonderful story to tell because she wasn't here just to change my life. That was just one little fraction of how God used this little 90-pound person to just change so many lives. So we would meet to talk about Joshua's care, but we quickly just bonded, and it was very apparent. A lot of people would say we were sisters. Some people thought we looked alike, which I will take because I think she's beautiful. I think she was far more beautiful than any beauty I might have. But we also had the same spirit, giggly, happily, and we just absolutely hit it off. What I didn't know is that day that I met her, I thought I was going to be meeting a parent to work on their case. But what I didn't know is I would make my best friend of life, and she eventually would become my family. You couldn't see this coming. You couldn't write this book if you tried. And I just want to read you guys something that I have saved on my phone. And I wrote this August 19th, 2018, and I've just saved it. 2 years ago, my best friend passed away, August 11th, 2018, of triple negative breast cancer. Still fresh. Still very hard for me to talk about. But this was a week, evidently, after she died. I just started writing down some of the things that she had done for me. I kind of joked at her funeral, believe it or not. You know how sometimes you go to a funeral and they say all these wonderful things about somebody, like, oh, they were the best person, and you look at the person next to you and you go, no, they weren't. They were a complete butt wife. Well, LeAnn was one of those people at her funeral that everyone loved her. She was the sweetest, kindest, giggliest, selfless person I have ever met, tied with my husband, who just happens to be her brother. And we're going to get into that story. But these are just some of the things in my 17 to 18 years that I was blessed to have her, that I wrote 2 years ago. Things she did for me. She asked me to church. She asked me to sing in the praise group. And each one of these things had a significant difference in my life, which I'm going to talk about. She cut my hair. She was a beautician. She'd cut my hair for me free. She never would take money. This may sound silly, but she went to Holiday World with me because I love Holiday World. It's a amusement park here in the Midwest, kind of like Six Flags. She went to Holiday World one summer with me when I was a single mom and sad and depressed. She went 7 times. And the interesting thing about that is we lived 3 hours away from Holiday World. So she either really loved Holiday World or she loved me, and I kind of suspect it was both. She lugged me around everywhere in 2008 when I was going through terrible depression and had a lot of suicidal thoughts. She took me everywhere. She once let me borrow her brand new SUV to take furniture to a friend in another state. I just thought that was a big deal. Sorry for the TMI, but she went with me to have our boobs done in 2007 or 2008. I wanted to have a breast lift and small augmentation. I'm just an open book, I'll tell you. I had 3 children, breastfed 2 of those, and I had lost a lot of weight, and I was not happy with my appearance, and so I told her that I was saving up money and I was going to get the breast augmentation and lift, and I had about 6 months of saving left to do. I had been saving for a while. So the next thing on this list, nobody knows this, she actually loaned me money to get my boob job done because she wanted to go with me at the same time. I didn't want to take her money, but she basically twisted my elbow and said, you take this money, you pay me back over the next 6 months instead of saving for the next 6 months. And she said, then we can have it done together. So that's a whole nother story. She flew to Dallas with me once because I had been booked to sing. I was a singer. And I was kind of scared to go by myself, so she booked and paid for her own flight to Dallas. And about 3 days before we were to leave, it got canceled. So I said, what should we do? And she said, well, we should just go anyway. And I said, okay, maybe we can like call a church or go serve at a soup kitchen or something. And she said, soup kitchen, which is funny because she was always serving the poor and helping people. She was like, let's just go shopping. So we did. We got on a flight from St. Louis to Dallas. We got in trouble on the flight because they thought we were drunk, and neither one of us drank because we laughed the entire time. I'm still sorry for the people on that flight. She prayed for me. I can't even say how much. 17, 18 years, she prayed for me. And to me, that's one of the biggest gifts of time and selflessness you can do for somebody. She watched my kids at night for a while because I worked in the emergency room night shift and my babysitter quit on me. And so I don't remember, maybe it was a month, but she would work all day and then let my kids crash at her house. She found my wedding dress. We went shopping. I was on a budget and she picked it out and I said, that's the one, because she and I had very similar tastes. The only thing about my wedding dress is it wasn't blingy enough, and I don't know if you can see back in the corner. It's actually back there. I've had it on a display for 9 years since I got married. So I said, I love it, but it's not blingy enough. So she actually found another wedding dress at a yard sale, had all the beading taken off and put on my wedding dress. Well, we had a friend sew it on for me, but she found that and it was her idea. She let me swim in her pool whenever I wanted. That's the biggie, because I keep telling my husband I'm getting a pool, but he doesn't agree with me. I love pools. I've always wanted a pool. She let me borrow her best little black dress, which I can't believe that I fit in, but I had lost some weight. She once flew to Orlando, Florida with me, and then drove to Naples, Florida with me 3.5 hours later because we wanted to go see her mom in Naples at her snowbird place, but I couldn't afford the flight from St. Louis to Fort Myers or Naples, so she took the cheap flight with me to Orlando and we drove 3.5 hours together in the rental car. She went shopping with me and I put times 18 years. We were, a month before her cancer diagnosis, we were shopping at Home Goods and laughing, and I was actually sick and she was pushing me in a wheelchair. Little did I know, a few months later, I would be pushing her in a wheelchair when she got so sick with cancer. She would often buy me presents that she remembered that I picked out. My whole house to this day is still filled with things that we had been shopping, and I would just say, oh, that's so cute, I love that. And I would never in a million years know, and she would sneak and buy it, and then over the year, Christmas or my birthday, that thing would resurface and she would buy that for me. Said I wasn't gonna cry today. She helped me decorate my daughter's graduation party. Now, that's not just a little thing. When I have parties, I have big parties. You ask my husband and my daughter. My daughter has kind of similar to her mother's taste, expensive. So when I wanted to have my daughter's high school graduation party, she sent me pins on Pinterest, and she actually sent me like fabulous wedding reception pictures, and I was like, Scarlett, this is a graduation party. But anyway, to get at the level that we wanted it on a budget took a lot of work, and we had very little time from the people tearing down at the Civic Center we rented until hers. And so LeAnn and my mom and just a few of my family came and worked their booties off to make that happen. So that's just a small list that I keep in my phone for 2 years of some of the things that she did for me. But I want to tell you a little bit more about our story, and the whole purpose again is I want us to look at LeAnn's life and how she affected me, and I'm sure there's thousands of people out there that could tell similar stories, and let us think about how we can be a LeAnn, how we can be somebody's LeAnn and change their life. And I think there was about a year period where we actually kind of went our separate ways a little bit, just how life happens, not purposefully, but just busy going in different directions, hadn't seen her. And I remember I took my daughter Scarlett to a local gymnastics center, and I walked in and I sat down, and guess who comes bebopping in her cute little high heels, 90 pounds, dressed to the hilt, is LeAnn. And I was like, oh my gosh, and we're squealing and giggling. At that time in my life, I had become a single mom just maybe a year or two before that. was very lost, very sad, very unhappy. I was in my very young 30s, maybe just 30, 31. And I was just lost, looking for happiness again. And so while I wouldn't say I was like a hardcore partier, I did go through a period where I would try to hang out with people who were younger than me and maybe go out and dance and party a little bit and look for some fun and happiness when my kids were at their dad's visitation. So I wasn't really on the best course. And I really prayed a lot, even though I wasn't really living my life the way I feel like I should. I prayed a lot, and I kept thinking, I sure would like to go back to church. Maybe that's what I'm missing. And so I actually prayed, Lord, I don't know where to go. And to me, church is a very intimate thing. You have to find the one that fits you. So I prayed, Lord, where should I go? Well, about a week before I had ran into LeAnn, I was at my hairdresser's, and the nail technician just turned to me randomly, and she said, you know what? I just found this neat little church at this small local town. It's just a block down from the post office. You should go. And I remember thinking, yeah, how many of us get invited to church and the people are so well-meaning, but we think, no, that's not happening. I'm not going. Well, that's kind of what I thought. A week later, when I ran into LeAnn, we're squealing and giggling at the gymnastics center, and all of a sudden I said, hey, where are you going to church? I've really been praying that I need to get in church. I need to get my kids in church. And she said, oh, we just started going to this neat little church. It's just in the town, the neighboring town, and it's a block from the post office. And I remember thinking, okay, what are the odds that my nail technician a week ago told me about the same little obscure small church in LeAnn? So I still to this day believe that God was working through these friends, and that's where I needed to be. That church ended up being one of the most faith-building, returning to my roots, returning to God, finding out who He really was, the beginning of peace and restoration in my life. Going to that church made one of the biggest differences in my entire life. And again, I credit the one friend and LeAnn for pointing me in that direction. So it wasn't very long I was at that church, and I don't know how, but she found out that I was a singer, and she asked me to sing in the praise group. Well, I had never done that. I had sang in choir in college. I had sang solo most of my life. I had just decided to give up my country music dream. I had pursued that in Nashville, was starting to have some nominal success, and I just felt like at that time it wasn't going to be the best option for my kids. I'd consider moving to Nashville, and so I kind of put that dream on a shelf. So when she asked me to sing in a praise group, I thought, I don't even know praise songs. I've been kind of being a sinner the last 3 or 4 years. I don't even know praise songs. But her and her husband were the worship leader, and they invited me into this praise group, and I just remember I was so backwards and shy. Wasn't really that comfortable on stage still, even though I had been singing as a country singer. It was still awkward. And they nurtured me, and I remember again being in that praise group brought me closer to God, gave me more peace, gave me confidence, and made me want to pursue singing even more. So instrumental just being in that little praise group with her. I've shared in other videos. I have some that I'll link in the comments where I went through depression and suicidal times. About that time, I went through a really horrible time in my life, and LeAnn was there for me again when I was laying on the floor in fetal position at home crying and just wanted to die. She was like, nope, you're gonna pull your bootstraps and you're gonna go with me. We're gonna go shopping, or we're gonna go to the movies, or you're gonna go with me to my father-in-law's barbecue. I was like, I don't even know your father-in-law. And she literally drugged me everywhere. 2010, I started dating a guy that I shouldn't have. She told me, of course, you shouldn't be dating him. That didn't go down well. She had tried to fix me up with another guy, a nice guy, but that didn't work out either. And then about 2010, her son Joshua, that I had taken care of in home health, and that's how I had met her, he went into cardiac arrest suddenly, and we all ran to the hospital. and they were doing CPR. And when I walked in the door, I looked up and I saw this man in the hallway, and I thought to myself, I think that's LeAnn's brother, but I wasn't sure. I'd only met him one time when he'd brought his child into the emergency room for a football injury. I later found out that when I walked in, he felt something, but he didn't tell me this till later, that he felt like God had indicated in his heart, she's the one. Well, it's a good thing he didn't tell me that, because I would have completely ran the other way. But the tragedy was Joshua did pass away. So we all grieved in the waiting room. We grieved the hospital. Spent the next few days at her house helping her go through pictures. Watching your best friend bury their child is, again, one of the hardest things. And so I don't know how much I was, but I tried to be there for her like she was for me as we buried him. And then something very unusual happened at the funeral. Brother was randomly seated right in front of me. So the whole funeral, I'm staring at her brother's neck, and I just remember thinking, he's a nice looking older guy, but not my type. But something just kept striking me about him, how different he was, and he seemed so genuine and kind. And so I remember actually at the reception, he'd walk by and just kind of grin at me, and I thought, oh, weirdo, he's flirting with me at the funeral. But again, something was so genuine about him, I couldn't be too mad. I just remember thinking, that's not going to happen. So a month later, she actually fixed us up. And if you watch my video, I'm going to link another video because that's a whole nother story. We went out on a date, and we dated 6 months, and I actually married my best friend's brother. And so Randy, LeAnn's brother, became my husband. And I've said many, many times, he and LeAnn are the sweetest, kindest people I've ever met. So what a miracle that this person who had changed my life since 2000-ish, 10 years later, a decade later, my best friend became my family. Just the most special thing. You can't even make this up. You can't even write this in a book. So I know that it was God ordained. Put this little 90-pound beautiful girl in my life and gave me so much love and so much sacrifice, but gave me her brother, gave me her family. So again, as I'm telling you these stories, I'm hoping you'll think about the small things that you do that could influence somebody else. She's influenced my life so much. If I can help somebody by one small thing, I want to do it because I know how those little small things she did for me made such a significant difference. So we had a beautiful wedding. I'm going to show some pictures of her. She helped me pick things out. We had a beautiful kind of black Chanel theme, like classy, not Chanel the brand, but classy wedding. She would tease me and say, oh, black and white, we can make it zebra. And so there's even a picture of her holding up a zebra flower in Hobby Lobby, and I'm going, no zebra thing, which we laughed tremendously about. I had one time when I had worked all night in the emergency room, and I came home and I was just getting in bed, and I took a drink of vitamin water, and all of a sudden I started having crazy symptoms, and I to this day still have unknown food allergies. I suspect that it's additives in different types of products. But I started breaking out hives head to toe, started getting nauseous, which I've done many, many times before, and I was out of my Epipen, a very unwise thing that I let happen. So again, being the wise ER nurse that I was not going to call 911, which is exactly what I should have done because I could feel my throat getting kind of thick, and that's how mine does when I have these reactions. So I called LeAnn frantic, and I said, do you have an Epipen? I'm having a reaction. And she was like, yes. Do you want me to come over? And I said, I don't know if I have time. And I said, can you meet me halfway? And she said, where do you want to meet? And so we decided to meet at Sam's parking lot in the nearby town. So I drove as fast as I can. I'm nauseous. I mean, hives all over. I'm literally going like this in the car driving. And I pull up and I jump in her car, which is like a brand new Mustang convertible, leather, all the bells and whistles. And I'm sitting there going, whoa, I'm trying not to throw up. And even though I'm a nurse, and everybody knows I hate vomit and poop. And so I'm like, oh God, please don't let me throw up in her beautiful new car. And so she grabs the EpiPen and she gets it out, and I'm puking and scratching and hiving, and she takes the EpiPen and she goes, whop! And she sticks it in her own hand. Well, her little hand was so tiny, just starts going like this. And she's like, oh, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? And I'm still puking in a bucket now in her car. And I'm like, what are we gonna do? And I'm thinking I'm gonna die in this car, puking in her car. And she's over here, how is she going to drive with her handshake? She drives as fast as we can across town. She runs in and screams at her husband, Dave, 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 we need another EpiPen, we need another EpiPen. And she throws me in the living room, tells me to lay down, and I'm just scratching and vomiting and thinking my life is going to end. And Dave comes running down the steps and he goes, here you go. And she looks at him and she's like, Dave, that is a monostat vaginal suppository. So, needless to say, the vaginal monostat suppository did not save my life, but they found another EpiPen and she injected my leg successfully this time, and I fully recovered. These are just a few stories of how she interacted with my life, how she changed my life by turning me the right direction to rededicate my life back to God and realize that this life is not all about me. Even though my Creator wants me to have fun and laugh, there's so much more than that. And so besides my mom praying and close other family and friends, LeAnn was probably the most instrumental in turning my life around. So what bigger gift could somebody give you than possibly me being able to go to eternity because of her? But then secondly, I shared the story with you, and I will link my story above so you can watch that video. What bigger sacrifice and blessing to have somebody give you their brother, to recommend you to their family, to becoming your family. And so my best friend became my family.